Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm your host, Nick Zulovich, part of the team at Cherokee Media Group. Thank you so much for joining us for this session titled Confessions of a B2B Marketer, How to Use LinkedIn to Make Your Sales Team Squirm with Too Many Leads. It's all brought to you by our friends at Payix, together with Visa. Before we get started, just a couple of quick items to mention. We are recording today's session, so keep watch of your inbox for a message containing a link to it so you can review the great information and share it with your teammates. You will be in listen-only mode for our session, but you can ask questions using the chat function here on Zoom, and we'll get to those questions after the presentation. So enough from me, let's get right to our featured presenter. Tori G. Smith is co-founder and vice president of growth marketing at Bay Leaf Digital. Tori, welcome to the webinar. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks for having me, Nick.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we ready to jump in?
Yes, please.
All right.
Go right in.
Absolutely, guys. Well, hey, thanks for making the time today. As Nick mentioned, my name's Tori Smith, co-founded the growth agency Bay Leaf Digital about 9 years ago. I've been very fortunate to, over a 20+ year career in digital marketing, worked with a number of large brands, including Cabbage, Citigroup, Travelocity, and I've been pretty active in the digital marketing community. And on a personal note, I manage an 80s cover band, which I can certainly save for another topic. But let's get into it, guys. I want to really quickly cover a couple house cleaning items. We will have time for some Q&A at the end, and as Nick had mentioned, a copy of this webinar will be sent to everybody. And if you do want a copy of this deck, I'm happy to save a PDF version and send that out to you guys. Just shoot me an email over at tsmith@bayleafdigital.com. So yeah, let's get right into it. So for anybody in sales, anybody in marketing, you guys are obviously quite familiar with LinkedIn. Started out as a place to find a job, was really popular among recruiters. Now it's 2022, and it's so much more beyond that. It's really unprecedented from a B2B marketer standpoint, what you can do with LinkedIn. And we're going to get into some very specific examples, not just concepts, but examples of things you can do to really strengthen your pipeline, beef up that pipeline. If you're tasked with growing that pipeline, if you're tasked with looking at various leads and qualifying those leads, LinkedIn is really a marketer's dream in terms of how you can target, how you can get very precise in who you're trying to get your message in front of, craft that message, run some tests, and really look at the data to see what's working. At the end of the day, our job is to make salespeople squirm because they've got more business than they can handle. They've got more leads than they can handle, and they really want to make sure that they're going after the right kinds of leads. The quality of those leads are of the right caliber that people are expecting, so that we can continue to grow their business. Through the years, LinkedIn has grown immensely. Last check, over 67 million active users. Of course, that's around the globe, but that's a phenomenal number. A lot of corporate network folks, like-minded business people, they're having conversations. They're in various discussion groups, a part of certain having certain conversations. That's very important to them. So they go there seeking advice or giving advice, and also seeing what's happening with folks in their industry. So needless to say, it's a great channel to really start forming great business relationships, and as a B2B marketer, it's a really great channel to push your message through. So the items we're going to cover today, first off, we're going to get into the 3 main ingredients that's really going to make your LinkedIn campaign sizzle. We're going to break each one of those ingredients down into specifics. We'll also be giving some very specific examples, real-world examples of really strengthening that campaign. So along those lines, we're going to talk about targeting with laser-like precision, so you can see more opportunities. We're going to talk about, well, what if my campaign's not doing so well? I'm seeing clicks, but the leads just aren't converting. We're going to address that. We're going to talk about shrinking your cost per lead through appropriate testing measures. We're going to talk about how to get more video views on the cheap and how you can shrink that, the number of those video views, which can be a great branding exercise as you try to push more awareness to your brand. We're also going to get into metrics, the real important metrics and KPIs to really hone in on so that you can optimize those numbers and really strengthen the performance of that campaign. And if there's time, we will cover one hack that we recently learned that I'll share with you guys that just really boosted CTR over 1,000%. That was a neat aha moment. So we'll save that for the end. So let's get into the 3 secret ingredients to really get your LinkedIn campaign to really, really rock and to really sizzle. First off is getting your audience right. To get your audience right, this is the most important step. You really don't want to rush this step. You really want to spend extra time figuring out who is it I'm specifically targeting, and we're going to get into those examples in a minute. And then you're going to exclude those that we don't want to see the message. And we're also going to look at the size. Do we have the right size of audience? Is it too big? Is it too small? Where is that sweet spot? So we're going to get into crafting the right audience for whatever product or service you're trying to get through. Secondly, we're going to get into the offer, making sure that your offer is matching where they are in their journey. Is it hitting the right stages? Is it resonating? Are we looking at the right metrics based on what we're offering? Are we seeing a nice completion rate of a form? Are we seeing a good click-through rate? So we'll talk a little bit about the metrics that go along with that offer so we can see what needs to tweak, what adjustments need to be made. And then lastly, the creative. We've got to really be bold and switch it up, changing out the imagery. It could be silly things like adding brackets to the messaging. Does a vertical image work better than a square image? The location of the button, all of those things do matter. They certainly don't matter near as much as getting the audience right, because the audience you have to get right before any of this other stuff matters. But we will talk about some really good examples of how to get the creative just right. So let's dive into the audience. So when you're building a campaign in LinkedIn, one of the early things it asks you about is okay, who is your audience? How are you going to define your audience? Who is it you want to put your ad in front of? And you really have 2 main choices. You have this notion of a pre-built list of contacts. Let's say it's let's say it's an existing list where you maybe get a list of folks that were attendees at a trade show, and you have their name and email and company name. Not that you're going to email those people, that would violate spam, but we could at least take that list, upload it to LinkedIn, and push ads in front of those people. And so LinkedIn will take that list, digest it, and figure out, okay, of this list, say I'm going to make up a number, say of 1,000 contacts I uploaded to LinkedIn, LinkedIn's going to analyze that data, whatever data you provide it, and it can look at other things besides email address. It can look at, do they have a LinkedIn URL profile? Are there other attributes that make up that list? But it's going to take whatever data that you can give it, ingest it, and figure out who's actually using LinkedIn. And then it's going to match those people up and create a matched audience. And that matched audience exercise takes about 48 hours for them to build that out. You do have to have at least 300 contacts that are matched for it to actually be used. And so that's a very easy way to get in front of a very, very specific audience, is to feed LinkedIn the list of folks that you want to go after. And then the second piece is maybe you don't have a list. Maybe there's specific criteria around a specific industry they're in, specific skill set they have, particular job title. This is where you can go in and you can cherry pick which pieces you really want to go after to push your message in front of as well. And the neat thing is, if you really want to get specific, you can combine the two into one campaign. You can say, hey, I've got a list. Oh, and I also want LinkedIn. I want to cast an even wider net. I want LinkedIn to find even more folks meeting these various criteria. So it gives you that option as you define the audience. There are a few do's and don'ts around targeting the audience. A couple of do's is you want to make sure that you're making sure that the inclusive messaging is there. So you're targeting, you're including specific folks, the positive side, and you're also excluding specific folks. Maybe you don't want your competitors or the interns to be a part of your audience. And you can also load in exclusion lists. This is where you have maybe a lot of competitors. You can upload a list of your competitors here, so that maybe you don't want them to see your message or waste your advertising dollars on their fake clicks. You can also pay attention to the and or attributes. So obviously and is going to filter down. It's going to be more specific, whereas or is going to be a bit more open. So it could be X or Y. So you'll see a larger audience when you use or. And the way it lets you craft it is you can use a combination of the two, depending on which attributes you're picking. Okay. Now some of the don'ts within LinkedIn is the notion of an audience expansion. This is where LinkedIn basically takes liberties. You've already gone through the painstaking process of cherry picking all the various attributes around titles and industries, maybe even specific companies. If you enable audience expansion, that's saying, hey, LinkedIn, I did the homework, but I'm going to trust you, and I want you to go find go find even more people beyond what I've already defined. When you leave it to LinkedIn to do that, it will use up a lot of your budget, and in our experience, it tends to dilute the performance. So we typically advise to not turn on the audience expansion option. There's another option, similar but different, called the LinkedIn Audience Network. This isn't so much of LinkedIn choosing attributes. This is actually LinkedIn has partners, other websites to showcase their ads to. As part of their audience network, Google has their Google Audience Network, very similar. Again, this could also dilute it. There are a couple of exceptions to this case. We'll give an example a little bit later today on running video ads and how turning on the audience network can actually help with a video ad in terms of brand awareness, and as well as brand awareness campaigns. So those would be the two exceptions. But if you're running a typical sponsored ad campaign, we would not advise about turning on that LinkedIn Audience Network. And then be mindful of not marketing to too large of an audience. How do I define large audience? 500,000 or more. That's pretty large. You're gonna want to get less than that to really get in front of the right folks. Speaking of getting in front of the right folks, let's shift gears and talk a moment about the offer. So when we are our agency, we purely focus on B2B. We have a lot of clients that we work very closely with on crafting the offer and executing the campaigns on LinkedIn. And really and truly, I mean, these are 1, 2, and 3 are really kind of marketing 101, but it's worth repeating. Offer obviously has to be compelling. So question, hey, is this really going to raise eyebrows? Is this going to get their attention? And so that's key. And the second thing that a lot of folks might not be aware of are the 3 main stages of that customer's journey. So certain types of content do better depending on where they are in the funnel. For example, your top of your funnel content is going to be things like people hearing about you for the first time, like your blog post or maybe a video or even an infographic. And then you have your middle of funnel. So maybe they've heard about you. This would be good where you can try. You've seen that they've engaged. You can send them another offer where it's a little bit deeper in nature, where we could gate it, meaning we could ask for an email address, such as a case study, a white paper, maybe register for a webinar. And then lastly, those that are bottom of the funnel, this is going to be more of they're closer to making a purchasing decision. This is where you can go in and ask for the demo, maybe provide some high-level pricing information, even offer a trial. The number one mistake that I see with clients is they try to shortcut this step. They try to, they launch a campaign and they go straight for the demo. They go straight for the jugular. They're going straight for the trial without doing any sort of education, without providing any sort of insight. And I know we all have deadlines to meet, and we're all in a hurry to try to feed that pipeline and get them to a demo. But if you leave out these other two stages, you're going to be pretty disappointed in the results by shooting straight to this last stage here. So our advice would be to make sure you know that the content that you're pitching speaks to whatever stage that they're in. All right, and here's just a few examples of some offers that we recommend. A middle of funnel would be a webinar. Hey, look, there's Nick right there. Another example would be a white paper. White papers, make really good insight. And then again, that's more of a middle of funnel play. And then a demo for those of you guys that are maybe selling software or some sort of platform, trying to really demonstrate all the value. Demos is great. It could be maybe you're gearing up for a trade show or conference. You're going to have a booth. It could be swing by booth 1, 2, 3. And come enter for a raffle. Have some sort of offer to give them some sort of reason to come by your booth. So making sure that the creative pops and really resonates with whatever stage they're in. So a few do's and don'ts of the offer. So well, real quick on the do, obviously we need to be very, very clear. We need to speak the language of their industry. If we're talking to lenders, it's okay to use acronyms like LMS. But if we're speaking to dealers, like car dealerships, they have dealer management systems, DMS. But definitely speaking their language will help separate you from the pack, so it's not just one universal message. So that can certainly be helpful. Obviously, offer something of value. That's pretty straightforward. And then make sure your call to action is compelling. If it's download now, that really resonates with folks because it's like immediate gratification. If it's learn more, it doesn't sound too salesy. It's like, hey, I'm educating you. So those are a couple of call to actions that we've seen success with. Couple don'ts. Don't gate or don't ask for an email address for that top of funnel content. Very, very frustrating. Hey, I want to watch this video. Oh, you can't watch this video until you give me your email address. Well, okay, I'm gone. That's silly. Or even a blog article. You certainly don't ask for that. That's more of an awareness play. And don't make claims that you can't back up. Don't use any sort of misleading language. That's pretty basic. And then avoid being too generic, just like a contact us. I would give them some sort of incentive on what that next step is. All right, the third ingredient is the creative. Now on LinkedIn, you have several different kinds of ad formats, from single images to multiple images through a carousel, videos, spotlight ads, conversation ads, where you can actually use their in-mail messaging service, even event ads to promote conferences and webinars and things of that nature. So really a lot of options here. Which one is the best? People get asked that all the time, and that's a loaded question. It just really kind of depends on what your motive is, and really how quickly you're looking at results. For today's conversation, we're going to really get into the single image ads, which you have these images here and you have the text here. We'll also talk a little bit about the video ads as well. We're going to go through some of these examples. So PayX is actually one of our clients, and these are all ads that our agency has put together, and we have done a number of different tests to see which ones really draw in high click-through. Is the offer spot on? Are we seeing good engagement? So we're testing various creatives, constantly testing various creative, various ads, the copy, the imagery, et cetera, to make sure that it truly is resonating. So the worst thing an agency or a marketing department could ever do is just launch it, set it, forget it, and walk away. You launch it, and then that next day or a few days later, you're going in and you're looking at those metrics. You're looking at the performance, and we'll go through some of those metrics here in just a second. But let's quickly go over the do's and don'ts of the creative. So do's, hashtags. Hashtags are still popular. Hashtags, you can kind of see what's trending. People can click on hashtags and see everybody who's kind of jumping on that topic. Also on LinkedIn, it's kind of neat when you do hashtag, they actually highlight it in blue, so it tends to pop a little bit. So that is, hashtags even today are still the best practice. Be sure to also call out the job title of your target audience. We've done a number of tests here, and calling out the job title, it's like you're speaking their name almost, to a degree. So it's another way to really cut through the noise. Call out the job title or even the persona within your creative. And then another best practice that we've seen is the notion of LinkedIn has something called a lead gen form. And what that is that's, you guys have probably seen this. You see the ad, it could be for an ebook or a case study or something, says, hey, download now. Instead of taking them off of LinkedIn and onto your website's landing page, totally disrupting their experience, the lead gen form keeps them on LinkedIn. So they click download now. It says, hey, you're going to be volunteering your email address over to this company. If you're cool with that, go ahead and hit download now, and they'll get it instantly. And then we can, what we've done for many clients is actually take that lead that sits kind of in a CSV file on LinkedIn and actually connect it into a CRM like a Salesforce or a HubSpot. So you actually see that lead show up in your CRM without them ever leaving LinkedIn. So we've seen quite a bit of a strong take rate on that, because again, you're not really disrupting their experience. Let's see what else. Some don'ts. Be mindful of not using too much text in your imagery. 3 lines at max. And then don't become complacent and just say, hey, I'm just going to throw this one ad out here and hope for the best. No, we certainly recommend trying multiple different, at least 2, if not 3 or more, to put out there and kind of see which one the winner is. And we're going to go over some examples on that here in a minute. And then, they do have character limits on when you start to type out the headline or the description of the ad. Don't feel like you have to maximize it every single time. Someone will be like, oh no, I want to maximize it so I can eat up all the real estate. Chances are a lot of people aren't clicking the little read more. They're not reading the whole thing. So don't feel obligated to fill up the entire character limitation every single time. All right, I'm going to shift gears and we're going to talk a bit more about the audience. We're going to pull back some of the layers of that onion. So as I mentioned, the audience is the absolute most important step to take, because if you don't get that right, nothing else is really going to work on your campaign. So when you create your audience, be very cognizant of your audience size. So earlier we talked about specifying specific titles and job functions, maybe seniority. If you do that and your audience is millions upon millions, in this really extreme example, 190 million, yeah, that's not realistic. We advise, to try to keep it under 50K. I typically say 5 figures. So, minimum 10K. 50K up to 100K is fine too, again, depending on how big of audience you're trying to tackle, as well as how big your budget is. Obviously, budget does play a role in this. But what's that sweet spot starting out? I would say somewhere between 10 and 50,000 would be a nice size audience. And then when we talk about targeting with laser-like precision, we want to make sure that you are excluding those that you don't want to see your ad. Okay, I touched on this earlier, but let me give some examples. Customers, employees, competitors, partners. You don't want them wasting money on or wasting their clicks on your ad spend. You'll want to exclude specific job experiences. Maybe you're going after the C-suite, you know, in the VP level. So make sure that titles like specialist or intern, you know, things like that, where maybe they, you know, lower levels of the totem pole, they don't have the decision-making capabilities or even the influence that you're trying to target. So make sure that you are excluding those kinds of experiences out of your targeting. And then there's also some company attributes that you can remove. You know, so maybe, you know, your really tiny companies, those who have, say, less than 200 employees, you can also exclude from that. So all of these attributes can really help make or break a campaign by just really fine tuning who or crafting, shaping who you're trying to get in front of. Okay, now after that campaign is launched, you've picked the job titles, the seniority, you've got it, and you're like, yep, this is great, and you're letting it run for a few days. Don't, you know, when you log in, you're going to see some baseline metrics. Hey, you know, we're seeing this many clicks overall, we're seeing this many conversions overall, and that's all fine and good. But I would pay extra special attention to these drop downs. These drop downs are filters where you can actually take a magnifying glass and look at, hey, which job function actually engaged with my LinkedIn ad? Which type of industry engaged? You know, and by engaged, so that you can't, this is covering it, but this actually says impressions. So it's like, hey, who's my ad being shown to? Well, you know, you know, the most of the ads been shown to folks in sales and finance, you know, and business development as well. And then of those who have actually clicked, you can actually see click-through rates from, you know, within that particular you know, job role. But you have a lot of options to really slice and dice the data to figure out who you're pitching to and who it's resonating with. I do recommend, after running this for at least a week or two, you're getting some learnings. If there is a particular demographic that's just not engaging, then go back to the audience and exclude them or pull them out of that targeting, so we can free up that budget to focus on those who really are spending time and are interested in what you have to say. So we also see this from time to time, where we'll launch a campaign and the clicks are coming. Okay, so we're halfway there, but the leads aren't really happening, or the leads that we see are they're tire kickers. They're just not ideal. And so this is a great time to pause, reflect, and say, okay, what do we think is happening? What's gone awry? So first thing is, look at the creative. Is the message connected? The message on the imagery, is it actually resonating with the offer, with that lead gen form that we're taking them to? If we do take them to a landing page, is it a connected experience? Okay, we have to make sure we're not misleading them. Another thing to look at is, are we asking for too much? You know, a lot of people are like, oh, I really want to know, you know, their name, their company name. Gosh, I really need their phone number. You know, I need these 5 or 6 things. And again, you know, the more cumbersome you make it, the lower the click through. So ask for as little as you can. You know, I like to say, hey, get the email address, and then from there, use a tool like a ZoomInfo or Seamless.ai, pull that email address in and get the rest of the intel. You know, you don't put the onus on that prospect to fill out that form for you. Go ahead and, you know, take what signal they give you, and then you do the rest of the work, you know, and train your sales team or your SDR to connect those dots. So that can be really helpful. And then yeah, I talked about, are you using a landing page, using a lead gen form? If you're using a landing page, chances are your click-through may be high, but your conversion is going to be very, very low, because it gives them another reason to escape, another reason to, oh, you just disrupted my LinkedIn experience. Now you want me to read all this other mumbo jumbo you have on your landing page. And, you know, some people might feel that's a bit overwhelming, especially if they're in a hurry. So that's why we do, at least on LinkedIn, we do advise to certainly test both, but more often than not, your lead gen form is going to have a much higher conversion rate overall compared to that of a lead gen, or of a landing page rather. All right, let's talk about shrinking the cost per lead, and making sure that we are testing the right things so that we do shrink that CPL. So, you know, as I mentioned, you want to continuously test out your creatives. More specifically, you want to look at colors, images, the messaging, the call to action. All of those things can really make or break a successful ad campaign. Anything that's performing poorly, we can pause and replace it with fresher creative. And maybe it's not the messaging, maybe it's the actual imagery, maybe it's the messaging on the imagery, maybe it's the model. It could be a number of things, and you really won't know. You're gonna have to try to reverse engineer, get inside their heads to figure out what is it that's resonating or what is it that's not resonating, so we can refresh that and try something new. And if you you know, if you really want a really good test, earlier I mentioned at least 2 or 3. Best practice would be 5, because within 5, again, if your audience can support it, it's going to typically rotate those ads, so you can see which one is actually drawing the most clicks, drawing the most interest. So 5 is a nice round number that can give you some learnings pretty quickly. And of course, always be testing, always be optimizing to really get that lead gen count up. Okay, so I've been cramming a lot. I'm trying to cram a lot here in the course of an hour or less. So I do want to have just a quick interactive poll here. So what we're looking at on this slide, guys, is 3 actual ads that we ran for PayX not too long ago. Really all pitching the same thing. It's a white paper that educates the audience. In this case, it was lenders, about the importance of digital customer engagement, DCE. And we have 3 versions here. So I just want to take a moment. We're going to make this interactive for just a second. I think if our polling feature works, I'd like you guys to study this and tell me which one you think performed the best. You get 1 shot, 1 answer. And we're off to the races. I'm seeing some numbers come through. Now okay, I'm sharing my screen, so I believe you guys can see this this poll here. So you guys are seeing the dot race, as I like to call it, the dot race. And if that's the case, I should probably move my poll out of the way so you guys can see the options here. So and as you guys are voting, just real quick, want to mention, you know, we've got this one here that's got this this cool picture of this phone that's exploding with a variety of different things. It's like omni-channel related things, different channels on all various ways to connect with your customer. Then you have one that's a blended approach of some messaging with somebody very relaxed checking out their phone. And then you have this third one that in big bold letters, attention lenders, with some benefit copy. How do you increase your collections with DCE? Picture of a model here holding a phone. Really, all the call to actions are the same. They're all download white paper, and then the main headline here is all the same, and the call to action is the same. So really, the only difference here is going to be the imagery, the creative. All right, and it looks like the votes are in. We got 1 vote for this first one. We got 1 vote for the second one, and then so we got 5 votes for this last one. And so the winner is, let's make sure this is working here. There it goes. This first one here, we saw a 0.05% click through. So it translated to 2,000 impressions. We got 1 click. That's about as poor as it gets. So after seeing that over a few days, we didn't let this run too long because it was performing so poorly. We're like, all right, let's reassess. The next one was 0.45% click through. So this we let it run a little bit longer. Got over 10,000 impressions, 45 clicks. Not bad, you know, for a LinkedIn ad. That's about half of 1%. That's not horrible. That translated to 1 lead. So when you look at 1 lead out of 45 clicks, it's about a 4.5% conversion rate. But I'm happy to say the clear winner here was same click-through rate as the previous one, but if you continue to read on, this one got 65 clicks, translated to 8 leads. And the math on that, 8 leads out of 65 clicks, 19% conversion rate. So clear winner. And this is a really good example of always be testing. Test the imagery. If my client says, why do we think this one did so much better than the others? I've got some ideas here, but I think calling out lenders, having a friendly smiling face, and also really focusing on the benefit copy. Hey, I'm educating you on how to increase collections with DCE. And so it really says, how are you solving my pain? How are you helping me? And this ad does the best job of that. The other two, not so much, but this third one really did a good job. So again, this is a classic case of always be testing and making sure that the messaging and the imagery and the creative is spot on. All right, let's get into a neat little trick about increasing video views and shrinking the cost of the views. So LinkedIn for the past few years now has video capabilities where you can actually have the video show as they're just scrolling in their feed. And if your audience is well defined, you might struggle getting a lot of views on that across that audience. But we, through a number of campaigns and some testing, we had an aha moment recently on how to boost the number of views and how to shrink the cost per view. The ECP is, I think it's effective cost per view. Effective meaning they had to see it for like at least 2 seconds. So in this case, we initially ran this video campaign. We got 1 click off 975 impressions. It really ended up being 21 cents a view. And this was over a 3 or 4 day period. So we decided to go in and say, well, let's test actually going beyond LinkedIn, and let's see if we can look at the LinkedIn audience network and see what that does. And by doing that, we were able to get 25 times the amount of views over the same period of time, over the same 3 day period. And effectively what that did is it shrunk our cost per view down to 3 cents a view. So really, really good example of creating some brand awareness and educating them on the cheap, in a very, very inexpensive fashion. And again, just what we did is there's this checkbox essentially that says LinkedIn Audience Network. It's under placements, and turn that on. And so as this graph right here shows, before we had that turned on, we were seeing fewer than 100 views a day. After we flipped that switch on, it started exposing that video ad across other sites that were a part of the audience network, and it really jump-started that the amount of views. So that was a nice thing to see. Okay, so speaking of looking at some of the metrics, let's get into specific metrics that we really need to keep a close eye on to make sure the campaign is performing optimally. So LinkedIn has a ton of metrics to look at, and it can be overwhelming. But we highlighted what we think are the most important ones. So we'll put some use cases together. If you're seeing a low click-through rate, then yeah, switch up the creatives. Because as you saw the example earlier, if 0.05% click-through, that's not sustainable. So definitely switch out the creatives and do it sooner than later so that you're not wasting precious ad spend. And then make sure that your audience is targeted to with that laser-like precision that we talked about earlier. Now, if you're seeing decent click-through but the conversion rate's low, ask yourself, are the creatives really connected? Are they misleading? Are they over the top? Are they not enough? Is there enough meat there? Really question the creative. And then again, is your audience well defined? Are you pushing your message in front of the right audience? Let's say that your form completion rate is not very high. Then in this case, I would look at the description of the offer, making sure that it's as clear as can be. So definitely double check the messaging. And are you really offering value and benefits in your messaging rather than features or sounding very, very passive? Sound very, very action oriented on really addressing what's in it for me. So make sure that the offer addresses the value, and that can certainly have a huge impact on your completion rate. And then, yeah, earlier we talked about not asking for too much information. So that's a quick review of that. And then if you see a low engagement rate, make sure that you can look at really fine tuning the audience by excluding any additional audiences that really shouldn't see the message. And then this last one is probably my favorite one on LinkedIn. I haven't really talked about it too much, but LinkedIn, when you build a campaign, it says, hey, I want to show my ads in front of, I don't know, people that are in the auto finance industry, or maybe more specifically auto refinance industry. And there are specific LinkedIn groups where there's a lot of chatter among auto finance professionals. And you can actually hone in on that, and you can say, hey, I want to show my ads in front of these people that are a part of these auto finance groups. So that can also give a boost to your ads. So targeting member groups explicitly can really be a nice increase in performance. So this is just a kind of a recap. Low CTR. This is the example of went from 0.05 to 0.45. Again, kept the messaging the same here. Changed out the imagery. Changed out the creative. Low conversion rate. Yeah, this is going back and making sure the audience is targeted from 190 million to 27,000. So just quick review from what we were talking about earlier. Low form completion rate. Yep, this is this right here. Lenders using a digital customer experience. It's kind of passive. It's accurate. We're not stating, it's an accurate claim. It's just not crazy compelling. It's not saying, okay, if I'm going to give you my email address, what am I getting in return? Whereas the second one tells me exactly what I'm going to get in return. I'm going to see some. I'm going to learn about how I can increase my ROI. I'm going to learn, the 4 key benefits of DCE. As well as some other best practices. And this was a real campaign where we weren't getting any leads on this one, but we quickly assessed that and said, hey, let's change this up. And within, I think, a matter of, I'm not sure what time frame this was run over. I think it was a matter of a couple of weeks. We got 15 leads. Let's see, low engagement rate, adding additional audience exclusions. Yeah, so this is another great example of, hey, we started out with some company lists, some exclusion lists, saying, hey, and I don't want entry level training or unpaid folks. So okay, that was a decent start, but the engagement rate was really low, and so it's like, okay, let's fine tune this audience even further. So by then we're like, well, let's step up our game. Let's go ahead and exclude some specific companies, job seniorities we already did, but let's get even more specific. Let's look at company size, and then let's also look at specific titles and industries and functions that we want to go after. So when I talk about laser-like precision, it is kind of sculpting that target audience. And as you can see here, the engagement rate increased dramatically after we applied those attributes. All right, and then we do have, we did get to this good. I'm just doing a quick time check here. We have, we had something that we had an epiphany not too long ago that I wanted to share with everybody. That was really interesting. This was something that we did to, as we were assessing our content, our offers and our creative, and we said, okay, we had this DCE ad where the click-through rate in this case was very dismal, very low. And it didn't have, it was just, it was an animated, it's not even animated, excuse me, it was a cartoony picture, which, I mean, it looks professional, but it doesn't really resonate. It didn't connect. So we tested that out by adding this one that you saw earlier, and it jumped from a 0.03 click-through to a 0.42% click-through by adding a human to the ad. So all of the description here was the same. The overall messaging was the same about increasing collection rates. The call to action was the same. Again, the only thing we really changed was this, and it had a massive impact. And so, getting that creative right and getting the messaging right on top of that creative really makes a makes a huge difference. And I'll point out to say that we didn't just strike gold on the first one. I mean, we literally used 12 versions, 12 variations of the creative to see which one resonated the most, and this one knocked it out of the park. So the learning there was, yes, ads with humans, and we continue to see this as we start doing additional tests. The ones with humans actually do draw in, and maybe there's some human emotional connection to seeing humans rather than seeing just a drawing. There's probably some psychology there at play, but we have noticed that does make a huge difference. So I just want to share that little hack that we learned recently. So I believe that really wraps up everything I wanted to present on how to really optimize LinkedIn to get your pipeline going, to optimize the campaign, get more leads, more qualified leads, and get your sales team squirming, because they're seeing a lot more leads than what they're accustomed to seeing. So if we have a few minutes, Nick, I'd like to open up the table for some Q&A.
Absolutely, Tori. Thank you so much for the great information and best practice recommendations. Again, we are recording today's session, so keep watch of your inbox for a link to that recording so you can review the great information that Tori has shared, and as well as distribute it around to your teammates at your shop. Again, today's webinar, Confessions of a B2B Marketer, how to use LinkedIn to make your sales team squirm with too many leads. It's all brought to you by our friends at PayX, together with Visa. And if you have any questions for Tori right now, you can simply just use the chat function here on Zoom, or if you think of something later, his contact information is there on the screen. And Tori, just a couple of questions to follow up from your great presentation. Just a couple of best practice recommendations. Again, just how much daily budget do you think a successful campaign needs, and how long should that campaign run? As they say, you can't measure success without measuring the data. How much resources could be utilized, and how long have you seen typical campaigns run?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So 2 parts to your question. The first part, how much budget before I start seeing results? Kind of a loaded question, because if my it's like, what size of house should I buy? What kind of car should I buy? I mean, it really just well, there's a lot of factors at play here. There's no right or wrong, but I can say this. I can say you need enough budget to let it run its course. And so if you historically have some data on, what have my leads cost me in the past? Let's say it costs $100. You really want to at least make sure that as you run your numbers, if you want to get that one conversion a day, and $100 might be $10, so whatever that number is, if you want to at least get that one conversion a day, to be realistic, use that number as your guiding point. It's like, what, starting out, if normally my leads cost me $10 a day, then I should at least have enough enough leeway there, in this case $10 a day on LinkedIn, to get to that one lead. Because let's say I'm being extremely frugal, and I don't want to spend $10 a day. Maybe I want to spend $5 a day. Well, that's going to do a couple of things. That you're going to exhaust your budget way too soon. $5 is an extreme example, because LinkedIn is going to be a little pricier, especially as you're targeting higher level VP and C-suite. But yeah, I mean, you want to make sure you have at least enough. I mean, for our clients, we have some clients that their budgets are $100 a day, and sometimes they're just trying some things out, and it's around $20 a day. It just really depends. And then the second part of your question, how long should this run? We typically we look at frequency. Frequency is the number of times your ad is shown. And so if your ad is shown, the same ad is shown over and over, a dozen times, it becomes stale. So you're going to want to continue to optimize your creative, optimize your You test out various creative, but even after you have, say, your 5 ads, if they're all being shown X number of times, the same people and over, it's gonna run its life. It's gonna run its course. So I would say at minimum a week, and typically a campaign, I'd say maybe a month. But again, it depends on your numbers. If you run the same campaign for month after month after month, it's just going to dilute, and you're going to see your numbers start to take a downhill trajectory. So just be mindful of keeping it fresh and always be changing out that creative, changing out that messaging.
Definitely all makes sense. Again, our special guest expert for today's webinar is Tori Smith, who is the co-founder and vice president of growth marketing at Bayleaf Digital. And Tori, this particular webinar has been focused on LinkedIn, and how does the quality of those leads that are generated through LinkedIn compare to other channels that are out there? Certainly, as you described, the use of company resources, no doubt looking for that ROI. How do those leads that germinate out of LinkedIn compare in quality to some other avenues that might be available?
We prefer for B2B marketing. I'm not talking about B2C, but for B2B business selling to another business, we have seen the strongest performance of all the channels that we've done, and we do a lot. Facebook, Google ads, Bing ads, Capterra, software. There's a lot, and they all have their pros and cons. What makes LinkedIn stand out is really the targeting, how precise you can get, how specific you can get. You can upload your attendees list from a trade show and continue to push your message front and center in front of the folks that you saw last week at that trade show. And you get very, very specific. So I typically see stronger performance coming out of LinkedIn than these other channels, from the awareness stage to the consideration or middle of funnel, down to the purchasing funnel, down to where they're asking for like a trial or a demo or something of that nature. And you can continue to use LinkedIn to get that intel, market to them. Hey, we see they're going down the funnel. Let's remarket to them, market to them again with a stronger message, a message that's further down the funnel. And they make it very, very easy to do that once you know which levers to adjust. So we've been very, very surprised to see how well some of these campaigns have performed over time once you apply some of these optimization techniques.
Closing moments here on our webinar titled Confessions of a B2B Marketer, How to Use LinkedIn to Make Your Sales Team Squirm with Too Many Leads. All brought to you by our friends at PayX, together with Visa, with our special guest expert, Tori Smith, co-founder and VP of Growth Marketing at Bayleaf Digital. And Tori's contact information is there on the screen, tsmith@bayleafdigital.com. If you have some specific questions for Tori and his team about how to use LinkedIn. And Tori, to round us out, certainly we all enjoy some downtime away from our professional capacities, but how smart is it to run B2B ads on LinkedIn on the weekends? Is that an effective path, or perhaps maybe is that some time to back off the throttle a little bit and let folks kind of breathe a little bit on the weekends? What's your recommendations there, and any other closing thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, no, we get asked that from time to time. There's really no magical answer. I could argue either way. The easy answer is test and find out for yourself, right? I could argue against it, saying, well, there's not many people are with their families and doing extracurricular things. They're not really tuned in. But that can vary by industry. Some industries are going to be more active on the weekends than even the weekdays, or maybe they come up for air and that is their time to do research or get advice and spend time on LinkedIn. So people are using LinkedIn 7 days a week. The weekends certainly aren't near as popular as the weekdays. And another example might be there might be less competition on the weekends. And so, I would take all of the best practices that we covered today and then come up with your own conclusion. So probably not the answer everyone was looking for to give them a black and white, but the best thing I can do is test it and see if it's worth pursuing.
That's Tori Smith, co-founder and vice president of growth marketing at Bayleaf Digital. Tori, thank you so much for the great presentation, so much great information and recommendations to help B2B marketing for any type of industry, whether it's in automotive or what have you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
And on behalf of all of us at Cherokee Media Group, we thank you so very much for joining us, and we look forward to having you again next time.